Hi, I'm Lucas Mack, and I'm on a mission to see the hurting get healed and the healed go out and heal others, in order for all of us to experience the true love and light we desire. This podcast is me sharing my journey with you, so you don't feel alone in your journey. Welcome to the Golden Rule Revolution. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another episode of the Golden Rule Revolution. I am Lucas Mack. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to bring today Dan Zehner on the podcast. He and I got connected through a mutual friend, and he is a beautiful brother who is an author and working on a book to help men reframe what being a healthy man looks like. And this is a beautiful conversation. Dan brings his vast knowledge of his career with him in this conversation. And it's really just a beautiful conversation, like I said. So thank you, brother Dan, and everyone enjoy. All right, my brother Dan Zehner, not be pronounced any other way. Excited to have you on, brother. And what an interesting journey of how you and I even got connected, through we're
like that adventuring party in like all the Dungeons and Dragons module. Like we somehow randomly met in a bar, and now we're going and fighting dragons together.
Exactly. Dude, I love it, man. I'm glad we did get connected, and just a pleasure to have you on, brother.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Big shout out to our mutual good friend Derek Chalk for linking us up, although we have many other tendrils that connect our tangled web.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the one that finally broke through.
That's right. That's good. And such a beautiful brother to make the introduction to. And
yes, he is.
I'm excited about it. Man, I'm excited to share what you're up to and hear what you're doing. But before we even get into everything you're doing now, I would love to just hear where you grew up and your background and how you got into the impactful work you're doing right now.
Yeah. So it's really funny. My where I grew up. No, my publisher asked me before I answer questions like that. Like, hey, you got this great story. You want to tell people about the adventures that just a normal guy can go on. I've got some really great stories about that on my blog. You're gonna put a note to that in the show notes later, but anthemoftheadventurer.com for anybody. It goes through a lot of that backstory and some of the trials and tribulations along the way. But our mutual friend Derek Chalk and I actually grew up in the same place.
Oh, really?
We went to the same middle school, Chippewa Middle School in Shoreview, Minnesota, 3 years apart.
Did you guys know each other?
No.
That's crazy.
We didn't. Yeah, we had no idea until a few years into working together, a couple years into working together, that I moved away when I was 12. So like when we would have gone to high school together and probably would have run into each other. But yeah, never knew.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm Minnesotan. Grew up in the Twin Cities area until I was 12, and then we moved to Central Illinois. All through high school there. I watched Hunt for Red October way too much and wanted to become a mechanical engineer to work on submarines, and that's what I did. Went to the University of Illinois like the rest of my family did, and got a degree in mechanical engineering. Met my wife in the marching band, and now we've been married for almost 13 and a half years. We got 3 kids. We're living in Oregon after a stint in Connecticut and 9 years in Indiana. And as of 7 months ago, we're now out in Eugene.
Wow. Amazing. And what about the subs? You never worked on them, but you worked on some other cool stuff, right?
So I did actually work on submarines for 5 years. I worked at a shipyard as a hydraulic systems engineer with a shipyard that built submarines for the Navy. Wow. Out in Groton, Connecticut. And every morning, one of my favorite things was walking into work and seeing a submarine coming up the river to the sub base and go,
That's amazing. That's
Like,
amazing.
I'm a part of the team that built that. Although, I was kind of given the side eye to the designers who were actually getting to draw the things that get built and go, man, they get to do the cool stuff, or the machinists or the the pipe fitters go, man, they actually get to do the stuff. I'm a spreadsheet jockey in a building that was built in 1946.
Did you ever get to
Like,
go in subs?
oh yeah, like every Friday afternoon that I got done with work early enough, that was my favorite thing. Like, I'd go down whatever ship was under construction, or
Wow.
they'd have one or two ships coming in for overhaul at a time, and I'd just poke around. And the beauty of having a security clearance, you can go a lot of fun places in a submarine you can't talk about in public.
That's
Uh,
cool. That's really cool.
so I would just sit in the engine room and just look at everything that's coated in hydraulic fluid and go, wow,
Mm,
the stories, and talk to the guys who work there, and try not to be in the way.
yeah.
Or I'd go watch the machinists turn torpedo tubes on a lathe, or the big 5-axis CNC machines making hull valves and things like that. It was just awesome.
Amazing. That's so cool. When
Never went underway on one, though. That was one of a couple of regrets. I never got to go on sea trials or anything like that, so I didn't actually go on a ship when it was out in the water.
That would have been cool. Well, there's still time. Let's see.
Maybe someday. Who knows?
Let's see if one of our friends can buy us personal stuff. Everyone talks
Right. Yeah.
about
Well,
getting a
they do
private
tiger
jet,
cruises. So
but
they do these things called tiger cruises, where like the crew goes out, while they're in port, and they can bring friends and family along. Journalists from time to time get to go down on submarines. So
cool. Yeah, there's still hope. There's still hope.
there's still hope.
It's funny. I guess there's probably more hassle to do it, but you always hear like people, the billionaires flying private jets, but you don't hear too often people taking private subs.
No, because submarines are way more complicated than jets.
Yeah,
Like, it's a spaceship, but it goes underwater, which has way more danger and pressure and all sorts of things that can go wrong than space.
wow, that's amazing. It is so cool. So I want to hear when the call for adventure and when the call for
Man.
freedom rang your soul.
Yeah, so it's a couple of times. So I was in Boy Scouts as a kid.
Mm.
I'm an Eagle Scout, and
Congratulations.
my dad would not let me quit. Like,
Mm.
I actually wanted to quit Scouts, but he wouldn't let me because he knew it
Mm.
was good for me, like usual.
Mm. Yeah.
So I became an Eagle Scout, and then, like most other people who get their Eagle Scout, they use it on their resume to get them into a job building submarines or something equivalently dream jobby for you.
Mm.
And then you forget about what's good about being an Eagle Scout is you know how to do things like survive in the wilderness with a shelter you built with your own hands, and how to use a pocket knife and tie all sorts of cool knots and first aid. And I remember some of that, but I forgot why it's awesome is because you can build off of all those skills as a grown-up,
Mm.
and you can deepen them and find other things that you love in the wilderness with other people doing hard things. And I completely let that part of myself go dormant for a season
Mm.
while I was at the shipyard and
Yeah.
figuring out what a new marriage looked like and all that kind of thing. But after our second of our three kids was born, Jane she was about a year and a half old or so. I'm part of a men's group online, and we are all reading Wild at Heart together, John Eldridge.
It broke up for a sec, but Wild at Heart by John Eldridge.
Yeah. And funnily enough, I was listening to the audiobook on a work trip to Oregon, to Corvallis. And I'm listening to John talk about his childhood where he'd spend summers on the ranch in Central Oregon with his grandpa. And I go, wow, wouldn't that be cool if we could live in a place like that where I could do that for our kids and myself. But that'll never happen. Not possible. But like, God wouldn't let that go. And so I got the honor to actually ask John about that on a video call. We got like, I don't know, 50 or 60 of us on Zoom from that group together, and we could ask John some questions. And I jumped in first. I was like, hey, John, what do I do? It feels like somebody's rang my soul like a gong. And I don't know what to do with this. It feels way bigger than me. And he just laughed. He's like, that's awesome. Love that. You should talk to God about that. And I'm like, okay, John, I've been in church all my life, but I never had a two-way conversation with God. What does that even look like? He's like, he's speaking all the time. You just got to ask him. And it doesn't have to be anything big. What's my next step? Who are my allies? And then just listen. Like, okay, I can do that. Thankfully, he also had another book called Walking with God, which I then read 4 times, that goes into how that looks in the life of a guy very much like me, who, has 3 kids and is going through all the crazy, and showing what that looks like. And I heard, hey, you should start a podcast about adventure, and here's the people you should invite to it. Like, okay. All 12 of them said yes. I'm like, well, I guess I got a podcast about adventure.
Wow.
And then it just started this exploration of like, what does adventure really mean? Why is it important? What does it look like in various seasons of life, in various forms? And now it's gotten to where I'm writing my own book on it, and how important it is to do hard things, to venture into the unknown, to walk through really tough seasons of life and just not give up. And to be able to co-create things with God. I like to say like every, I especially speak with businesses, like, because that's kind of a easily translatable thing for someone who owns a business. Like, every business is on an expedition.
Yeah.
You want something for yourself, for the people on your team, for the people that you serve. You have a goal in mind, but then there's a goal behind that goal, which is to be able to tell a really good story to your grandkids. Hey, remember that time that we did this thing? Or you see this watch that we made with a little fruit on it? We made that. Our team made that, and millions of people are enjoying that. But to get there, we need 3 things. You need a path, you need provision, and you need people. So on an expedition, you need a map, and you need to be able to translate that map and actually understand what all the little symbols mean on it. Like, if you're climbing a mountain, you're going to need a good topographical map, and you're going to need to understand all the little lines mean on it. You don't need Google Maps. You don't need a map of roads, because roads don't go where you need to get. So in business, you need to understand really well, why are you here? Your purpose. That little marker on the map that says you are here and here's where you want to, like, you need that for your business. You need to understand the environment that you're in and where you're playing and what's the terrain ahead. You need some milestones and categories to cover, and possible problems that could come up, and some solutions for those before they are staring you in the face.
Eagle Scout style.
Absolutely. Be prepared, right?
Yep.
Right. Carry a pocket knife.
That's right.
Know how to use it. Have a sharpener. Right. Know how to sharpen it.
That's beautiful. Basic.
And then you need the provision side, right? Like, you can't go towards the summit of that mountain without water. That would be stupid.
Right.
You can't go into a cave without a flashlight. That'd be stupid. You don't go into a really hard business decision without some knowledge, without some skills, without some experience, without some resources. That'd be stupid. You'd be irresponsible to do that.
Right.
And we need to trust that our Father wants to provide those things for us through guides, through help, through other people, which gets to the third point. Like, imagine you're on that mountaineering expedition. You need to be clipped into a rope as a team. So that when the blizzard hits, not if, when, you all can stay together going in the same direction and nobody gets blown off the side of the mountain. But for that to happen, your equipment needs to be sound, and you need to know how to use it. And everybody needs to have clearly defined roles. Who's going to go first? Who's going to go last? Who's in the middle? Who's carrying what? What is being carried? You need to have clearly communicated responsibilities and ways of communicating that are effective and understood by everybody on the team. You need connection. You need to be authentic with each other, vulnerable with each other. You got to trust the person in front of you and behind you with your life, and not just on the mountain, but in real life.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you need to be able to say, this person on my team, their needs are more important than my needs. Their concerns are more important than my concerns. And everybody on the team has to do that or it doesn't work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
What?
you need resilience, right? You need mental, physical, emotional, spiritual resilience when the chips are down, when things like you and I were talking about before we got on the recording here happen
Yep.
in life. You need to
Yep.
be able to have something in the tank
Yep. That's right.
to keep going.
That's right. I wrote a book, got published in 2017. I don't talk about it too often, but if I have a copy of it somewhere, it's titled, oh yeah, here you go. So it's titled "Everyone Has a Plan Until They Get Punched in the Face." Little did I know that
Yes,
would be a theme for life for me.
it's
But
so true.
and it is true. Life without that, and the whole premise of the book is, the bylines, how to develop your story and achieve your dreams. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like without the purpose, without the why, getting punched, you're going to quit. No one wants to just jump in a ring to get beat up. Like, hey, what are you doing?
And even more so, what if you planned to get punched in the face?
Yeah,
If you
without,
expected it ahead of time
yeah, good
and you
point.
trained appropriately and
Hmm.
you conditioned appropriately and you practiced appropriately, that when that punch came, you'd be like, cool, blocked, done.
Yep. Yep. Dude, I don't know why I'm thinking of it. Have you ever seen the movie? It came out a long time ago, Kung Pao Enter the Fist. It's so ridiculous.
It's so
It is
ridiculous.
one of the most ridiculous movies ever, but there's this premise in it where they trained Whip this character. It's so funny that I remember this, but they purposely trained him wrong. So when he got beat up, he thought he won. It was so ridiculous. Oh gosh.
So good.
Oh. He's like, your foot in my face, baby. It's like, but so often it feels like companies, especially working with business leaders, that they're jumping in the ring and they're just getting beat up and they don't have the purpose or understanding of how to navigate this. Especially, I find I work with enterprise companies and then also startups and have my own startup.
Mm-hmm.
It's the issues are the same. It doesn't matter the size of the company because it's a human
Yeah.
knowledge gap that is needed, which is so cool that you're helping companies with this in your book and podcasts and all that you're working on.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Like, let's say that path is askew for you. You
Mm.
may think you're killing it and you're making all these moves and you're doing all these things, but in reality, you're doing donuts in the parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, speed does not equal velocity. Velocity implies a direction.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Velocity is what we want. Velocity is good. Speed is not necessarily good.
Hmm. What makes people go, or how do people gain velocity? Wait, velocity then?
So this is my engineer hat. We'll take
Okay.
off my adventure hat and put my
Okay.
engineer hat on.
There you
So
go.
the equation that defines velocity is speed times a vector, like
Hmm.
a direction.
Hmm.
So it is a speed applied to a particular direction.
So is the direction vision, or what would you apply that to? Like a
Yeah,
success?
it's that overarching purpose.
Yeah.
Like, here is the environment, especially the emotional environment, and that we want to produce
Hmm.
and that which we want to avoid.
What are some examples that you've seen that companies you've worked with or leaders you've worked with that they thought they might have had a good plan jumping in the ring, but they didn't? And how were you able to help them?
Yeah. I've talked with actually a guy who ran a department in a hospital,
Hmm.
and he was like, "Oh man, I'm checking things off the to-do list and we're
Hmm.
doing all these things, but I get home and I'm exhausted
Hmm.
and I don't have time for my kids."
Yeah.
Like, wow, sounds like your direction is a little miscalibrated, buddy.
Mm.
And it was hard, but over the course of a better part of a year, and honestly, him like not being able to get into our program for a period of time as well, and then coming back and then finally having enough bandwidth to do it.
Mm.
We worked together and was like, okay, let's define what success looks like for you. Like,
Mm.
oh, well, I never really thought about that. And we did. And he was able to communicate that to his team. And so they're all like, oh, I get it.
Mm.
My livelihood, my feelings of success depends on my ability to produce feelings of success for my boss.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. We are now oriented. We are now rowing in the same direction. But
Mm.
we're still spinning our wheels. We don't have traction yet. And so we worked through some gaps in his team and some gaps in his own personal behavior that he needed to work on, and some gaps that he could inform his team about. That old like take the plank out of your own eye before you comment on the speck in your brother's eye. We did a bit of that.
Mm.
And then my favorite, we got to talk about Go Ruck. We talked about mental, physical, and emotional resilience and how those are connected, and how doing hard physical things helps to build our tank,
Mm.
from which all three of those draw.
Mm.
And choosing the harder thing is what puts deposits in that tank so that you have something to draw from.
Mm.
And so we started talking about his sleep patterns and his workout patterns and his where he was putting his attention online and all that kind of stuff. And over time, started to see some results. It was like, hey, I'm less exhausted now, and my team is doing better, and they're doing better without me.
Mm. That's beautiful. How is I'm going to deviate for a second on this, but how has your spiritual life evolved? You mentioned that you grew up, in Christian church, and then, we talked, obviously God is a reference point of this podcast, but how has your spiritual life evolved from childhood to where you are today?
Yeah, I've been able to relate to God better in my suffering
Hmm.
than in my success. Like when I feel like absolute crap, and I actually choose to like pay attention to that and sit with it long enough, and I don't medicate it or numb it with something, and I actually talk to God about it, or sometimes yell at him about it.
Yep. Yep.
I've had some really wonderful exchanges.
Hmm.
And it hasn't been sunshine and rainbows, but one of the things that's been interesting is, so since we moved to Oregon, I learned something very valuable. The only way you get a rainbow is after rain.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And every rainbow is a reminder of God's promise.
Hmm.
Like, that's the original intent of that. We're not going to go down that deep rabbit hole about how that symbol has been co-opted for other things. But like every time I see a rainbow out here, which is kind of often
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
because it rains all the freaking time.
You got to keep that green somehow.
You got to keep the green. Yeah, the rain brings the green.
Yeah.
And then he has been kindly but painfully dismantling my ways of supporting myself on my own apart from him.
Hmm.
We've lost relationships, friendships, and career opportunities, and church stuff, and family stuff, and physical stuff, and mental, like financial stuff, like all of it.
Hmm.
Anything that, I mean, and we're not done yet.
Yeah.
And any way that I could support myself apart from him is not working.
Hmm. Hmm.
And many people, I mean, we've talked about this too. Like I go there sometimes. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not God, but in those moments, if I go towards I'm being led rather than this sucks and
Yeah.
God is not only non-existent but evil,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I go there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But more and more often, by single degree shifts, I'm able to see or at least trust that I'm being led
Mm.
somewhere beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a really great quote by Wendell Berry at the end of his book, Jayber Crow. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Not the
Oh,
book. I know. Yeah.
dude, the book is great.
Mm.
It's like spiritual whiskey. It's like
Sweet.
well distilled. You can really only do it a sip.
Yeah. Yep.
Paraphrase because it's a long quote, but the idea is like, so this man is in his 80s and he's looking back on his life and he's talking about how at many times in his life it felt like he was going through the dark forest of error, or these twists and turns, and not feeling like anything was going the way it was supposed to. But then he's looking back and he's like, I can see now with the long lens of time or something like that, that I was being that I was taking the straightest path possible, and I can't shake the feeling that somehow I'm being led. And he leaves it with like, make of that what you will. Like, he doesn't prescribe anything either, which is just
That's
like so
beautiful.
playful.
That's beautiful.
It's
That's
really
beautiful.
good. And so I'm around a lot of other men who are living in that same spirit, who are really helping me interpret like all the crazy stuff that is happening in this season of life in my mid 30s, when everything seems to be falling down around my ears.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. We talked our first conversation, I think, and second, just the view of God and the different conversations I've had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just did a podcast recently. I think you said you listened to it, where I'm just like, sometimes, man, God and I just drag out fight. And I'm never in this interesting phase in my spiritual life right now, because I love God with every fiber of my being. Like, I love God. And then the question one day, I was like, and I've always loved God, even in the midst of the most heinous abuse and like horrible. I've always loved God. I've always like kind of been with God, and I'm like left out of my body has been with God. But one day I was meditating, and I was like, God, I love you, but I'm like, who is the God that I love? Like, who are you? Like, and since I've asked that, I'm like, I love you, God. I say this, but who are you that I love? Like, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
What does even the word God mean? Like, why do we say it? What is this sound and vibration that we speak of? Man, since then, and I know exactly when it was. It was in 2021 in my garage when I was meditating on my workout mat. Then I asked that question. And since then, bro, it has been a crazy journey of relearning my relation and position to God.
Yeah.
Where God
Yeah. I
used
had
to
an
be
experience like
so
that
huge. Oh, go for it, bro.
recently with a really dear friend of mine who is growing in the practice of healing prayer. And we were praying together, and he was guiding me through this exercise of like how and where I experienced Jesus, like bodily. And he was we could try this. So imagine a really positive experience, like thinking through a really positive experience lately. And like, so if you're listening to this, pause the audio here until you can get it. Like the most amazing thing that you've experienced. And then like, see it. What do you see? Smell it. What do you smell? Hear it. What do you hear? Like, go through all your five senses. And then he asked me, so my experience like was skiing. I was telling him about the sun on my face and the wind and the whoosh of the snow under my skis and the crunch of the ice as I turned and all that. And he's like, well, where's Jesus? And it felt most of the time like he was having fun skiing along with me, like beside me or in front of me or something. And then he asked me something like, well, what if you invited him in? And it was just this experience, this interesting idea of like, oh wow, like he's there, but my perception of him is he's outside somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I started thinking through this idea, like experience, and like, wow, what if he was like wearing me like get a set of ski gloves and a coat almost,
Mm.
and I get to be him but be me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. 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 It's
Like
beautiful.
just in the way that people experience my wonderful gloves that our mutual friend Larry recommended to me, they
Mm-hmm.
get to see that and see me wearing them. They see Jesus wearing me.
Mm. I'll tell you about a story about Jesus. Two of them. One is one of my coaching clients' son came to her just the other day and said, "I had an awakening, mom." And she's like, "What?" And this was from a nap. He woke up from a nap, and he said, I had an awakening." She goes, "What?" He goes, "Like you. I've had an awakening like you." And she goes, "What?" He goes, "Well, tell me about it." And he told her this dream. And in the dream, he shares what he saw that made him devastatedly sad. And then he
Mm,
looked up, this is not a religious household. This is not so this is, I would call it just not a Christian household. Okay. So this, what he saw is mind blowing. He said, I looked up, and this is an 11-year-old boy. As I looked up and I saw Jesus standing right in front of me, just looking at me with his hand out. And his mom goes, she told me this day. She goes, "Well, what did he say?" And he goes, "He didn't say anything. He just made me feel like everything's going to be okay."
wow.
I know. I was like, wow. And this is the second story I've heard of Jesus showing up to people who don't come from that religious paradigm at all, nor would they ever say the name reverently.
Mm-hmm.
Telling me a story in the past 2 weeks that Jesus has shown up to them. And it's so beyond beautiful, I think, is that we're rediscovering. See, Jesus,
Yeah.
many will come in my name. There will be many false prophets and many that come in my name, but my sheep will know my voice. And it's like, what is the voice of Jesus? You know, it's like you getting asked, like, well, where was he? It's like, well, good question. Where is he? But when we bring him in and allow him to see through our eyes and have this co-experience together, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Another friend of mine guided me in this. I was telling him about like this crazy season that we're in, and
Mm.
just feeling like um, what I want is so unattainable. And what I want is this quote by Dallas Willard has really been orienting, um, that to have a full life with God, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life.
Hmm.
And I'm like, how in the world do I do that? And so I was telling him about all these things.
Immediately.
Yeah, like immediately, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
like
right.
right. Um, and and we were going through all these things that were going on, and like experiencing, and unhelpful behaviors that I was doing, and he guided me through another experience where we basically like kind of went into my like heart space kind of thing. It was like, what does it look like?
Hmm.
And long story short, I saw Jesus tending bar at a medieval tavern,
Cool.
and it was full of like unsavory, unhelpful characters and
Hmm.
like spider webs and things. And like over the course of this hour that we were going through, it was like cleaning up the different parts of the
Hmm.
tavern. First, it was scrubbing out this kettle, and then it was putting down better floorboards that were sound, and
Yeah.
patching the
Yeah.
roof and fixing the door, and then eventually like I like what does this mean? And then eventually I saw this guy. I don't know how to describe him. He looked like Morgan Freeman.
Sweet. Okay.
But he's he's polishing this bar, and he's like, "Do you like a drink?"
Hmm.
Like, "Yeah, I'm parched." And he pours me a glass of water,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we sit there and hang out.
Hmm. Beautiful.
And it like when I hear people describe their experiences with Jesus, and then I don't experience him as often as I would like, I go to self-doubt and shame and dismissal and all that. So when you're hearing this, if this seems unattainable to you, it's not. Like I'm no more pious or righteous than anybody else. Like that's not what makes Jesus attainable and able to be experienced, just who he is. And he can and is experienceable, if that's a word, able to be experienced in completely unique ways to every person. Like that's what makes him God.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's beautiful, brother. With the journey you've been on spiritually, and then stepping into the business world and helping leaders and men specifically step into the fullness of who they can be, who they're called to be. What have you learned just from working with other leaders, even our mutual friends and stuff? Like, what have you learned about what makes a good leader and what makes a leader that could use some sharpening?
Yeah. Funnily enough, one of the best leaders I've ever experienced, I've only met twice. No, 3 times. I've talked to her 3 times. I'm just pausing to see if it would be helpful to give her name. I don't think it would be now, but happy to introduce you. You guys should meet. Anyway, so I've experienced her business from afar, like through YouTube, through Instagram, and every time I experience the heart of God in a nurturing, caring, compassionate, unhurried way.
Yeah.
And she on Zoom is exactly as she is in her work teaching yoga online.
Beautiful.
You know, that is a lady who is absolutely on fire, full of the heart of the Father. So what makes her a really good leader is she has created a culture where her entire team does that all together.
Beautiful.
And so that anytime anyone they serve interacts with their business, they see God. They feel loved. They feel cared for. They feel nurtured. They see beauty and awe and reverence and a slow pace and with care and compassion. So some of the best leadership I've ever experienced with her and with other people, they really deeply care for themselves, for the people under their care, and for those they serve. And they act in accordance with that. They take the time for deep, hard conversations. They're humble enough to admit when they're not the person to be leading the business and to give it to someone else. They're humble enough to say, my way is not the right way. Let's consider a different course, a different route. To say, I don't have everything figured out. Guys, gals, what kind of problems do you see coming down the path? And let's solve them before they're right in front of our face. And let's do it together. And they're wise enough to know that they don't know everything, and so they're continually seeking to grow and gain more knowledge and impart it to others.
Dude, that's beautiful. That's it's the adage that people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. You know, that true leadership is understanding how you make someone else feel. And I think I told you in this call earlier, I was on a call earlier with this executive, C-level executive at a big company, blew up another person on the call and just blew her up. Man, it was sad. And I'm like, that's not, that's not a leader. You might have the title, you're not a leader. You know, leadership is understanding how the impact we make on others, and it's either going to be negative or it's going to be positive, you know?
Yeah. And some of the things that I help people with is to untangle webs like that. So when we say leadership, like there is a lot of things underneath that. And there's a difference between leadership and management.
Yeah.
Like to me, my distinction, and I'm not saying like I've got the authority on this, but I found a really helpful distinction from a mentor of mine. So a manager has that positional authority. They're the one who's responsible to make sure that the have a vision, that it's carried out, everybody's got what they need to do it, and that they're protected and safe. The leader is the person who's doing the most effective producing of that vision at the particular time, and that people want to follow them.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then there's character traits, not character traits. I actually misspoke there trying to explain it. There are what people would typically call character traits that are actually trainable skills that make up a good leader.
Yeah.
Things like you mentioned, respect, right? Like respect is taking a look at your environment and how you affect the people in it and actually acting in accordance with that.
Right.
Like you can be disrespectful by just not paying attention to your own power and the effect that you have on people through no ill intent. Like you could have the best intent, but be disrespectful just by not reading the room.
Yeah, that's right. Bro, I used to have, so I had employees, and before I went on my healing journey, I got feedback from the employees that every time I had a conversation with a family member that was part of the issue that I broke away from, I'd come into the office and just be such a low vibe, but I wasn't aware that I walk in and everyone can feel it because I'm usually high, upbeat. Like, so when I walked in low and I got the feedback, I'm like, man, that's interesting that I wasn't aware. Sometimes we just need to be told in a gentle way, like, hey, this behavior affects, people certain way.
And what you're talking about there is you being a really good manager and creating a culture where feedback is encouraged.
Yeah.
And almost required to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's right.
And doing it in a way where it brings you guys and it brings your people closer together and builds that connection.
Yeah.
And also helps influence your behavior.
Yep. Man. Share, what the book you're working on and, the people you're looking for to connect. That's something everyone listening. Dan is such a beautiful brother, and I want you to connect with people after this.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the connection piece first, because if you've listened to this point, you're my people, right? So I'm going to give you a phone number to text here. Like I want you to text me. So you're going to text Lucas to 541-546-0799. This is the number I specifically set up for the audience of this podcast.
Cool.
So we can have a chat. And really want to talk about what it looks.
And by the way, we'll put that number in the show notes. So if you missed it or you go back, or we'll have that there.
Yeah. So really want to talk about what it looks like to go on an expedition as a business, to do the hard things that bring us life rather than prioritizing our own comfort. And what that actually means and what it looks like in real life in various ages and stages and things. And so I'm interviewing all sorts of people about that who are small to medium-sized business owners who have had some measure of success, who are like, doing well in one area, but are maybe overwhelmed or overworked or just exhausted.
Yeah.
And wanting to understand like what makes them tick, like what do they want that they don't have, and what's in the way of getting it. So let's if you're up for it, we can play this out.
Yeah, sure.
So for you as a podcast host of this show, like what do you want for this podcast that you don't have right now?
I would just say more listeners, a broader audience.
What else?
More time to create more episodes.
And what else?
I'd love to have sponsorship on it.
Okay. sponsorship, more time to create more episodes, more people listening. What's stopping you? What's in the way?
I would say time and priority.
What's keeping this from being a priority?
Well, my family and the full-time day job, right? Yeah.
So that's like an all too common scenario of like very real good things competing for that greatness.
Yeah.
And that's what I help people with is going through those really tough decisions of like, hey man, I got a family, I got 2 businesses and a podcast and this and that other iron in that fire, and man, it's exhausting. Like, okay, let's pick them apart. Let's go through which one is going to get you towards your ultimate fulfilled integrated life with God the furthest, the fastest. I say fastest, but most effectively. Because as we mentioned earlier, speed is not necessarily the goal.
That's right. True velocity. That's right.
We want velocity. We would rather have a couple of shuffles in the right direction than a Formula One car speeding off in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I just encourage everyone that's listening that Dan is a brilliant, beautiful, hearted brother. And I'm seriously, brother, I'm honored that you came on and you can share this, and I'm looking forward to being in person with you. We gotta do
Oh my gosh, yeah. Dude, like do you I can't remember. Do you like to mountain bike?
I've never mountain biked.
Ooh.
So I can't.
We have an opportunity for you.
Whether I like that or not like that. That's an NA on a questionnaire. I just give you an NA. But I love to get out in the mountains and get after it. Yeah.
Well, definitely let's work towards some plans and get out here, because oh my gosh, like even when it's raining, the Cascades are beautiful.
Dude, seriously, I know.
And even when it's blowing crazy, the Pacific is beautiful.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And you mind? I've never done this on a podcast, but do you mind if I pray with you? And
I would love that.
You prayed for me the other day, and I appreciated it. And I'd love to pray. Father God, I thank you for my brother Dan, and I thank you for everyone listening. This, whatever, God, you're stirring in their hearts. I just pray that you stir up the good and stir out anything that's hindering them from the fullness of walking in your presence. And I pray that blessings over Dan, his family, me and my family, and every person listening all over the world. We bless you all. And thank you, Father God, for your love and your grace, your mercy, your truth, and that you are walking with us as we walk in you. And just ask for your blessing over it all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, brother. God bless you. I'm so glad you came on. And everyone, just to reiterate, I'll put Dan's website. I'll put that phone number in the show notes. And so please reach out to Dan, and God bless you, brother.
Yeah, bless you too, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for supporting this podcast, for listening. Get connected with Dan. You can find him online, and just make sure that whatever you're doing right now, brother and sister, that you keep holding on to the love and light and God's love and God's light. Everything else is being shaken. Everything else seems to be crumbling. And that's a good thing. For what is true, what is real will remain. Everything false is being shaken. So I love you all, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for supporting me in this journey. Thank you for Dan for coming on the podcast. And everyone, I look forward to talking with you on the next episode. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for listening. For support in your journey, go to my website, lucasmack.com.